The wheels of Clara's suitcase hummed softly as she walked into the apartment, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor in a rhythmic pattern, almost like a song. It was an odd mix of elegant and unsettling. She looked radiant, absolutely glowing, like a woman who had just returned from an adventure. A smile stretched across her face that seemed too bright, too perfect. It was the kind of smile I hadn't seen in years. She dropped her suitcase by the door with a soft thud, her coat falling from her shoulders and onto the chair, and she took in a deep breath, letting the air fill her lungs as if she had just arrived home after a long, exhausting journey. "Hi, honey," she sang, her voice sugary sweet, dripping with affection that felt rehearsed. "I missed you." I sat still, my hand still clutching the mug of coffee I had been nursing for what felt like hours. The room felt heavy with the silence, save for the faint rustling of the papers in the envelope sitting on the coffee table in front of me. The edges of the envelope were crisp, freshly opened, and the faint scent of paper lingered in the air, a sharp contrast to the otherwise quiet atmosphere. I offered her a tight smile, one that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Welcome home," I said, my voice calm. Too calm. She leaned in to kiss my cheek, her lips brushing the side of my face. But as she moved closer, I turned my head just slightly, just enough to let her lips meet nothing but the air between us. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. Just a brief moment, but it was there, and it was enough. Then, just like that, it was gone, replaced by that same practiced smile. She was good at hiding what she didn't want me to see. "How was the trip?" I asked, leaning back into the couch, my tone steady, almost attached, as if I were asking about the weather, not about the woman who had been away for God knows how long, leaving me with only questions and doubts in her absence. "Oh, it was great," she said, her eyes sparkling now, "but only just. Busy but rewarding. I think the client's really happy with our presentation." "That's wonderful," I replied, nodding. She started unpacking her purse, pulling out the usual items. Her phone, lipstick, tissues. But it was then, in the midst of her seemingly casual unpacking, that her gaze landed on the envelope resting on the coffee table. Her movements stilled for just a moment. Her fingers hovered above the envelope, her eyes narrowing, just a touch, and the spark in her eyes seemed to dim ever so slightly. But it was a fleeting change, a shadow quickly hidden behind her mask of calm. "What's that?" she asked, her voice tinged with curiosity, though I could hear the undercurrent of something else. Something less genuine, more wary. "Something you should probably read," I replied, gesturing toward the envelope with a lazy flick of my hand. "Go ahead." She hesitated, her fingers lingering for just a moment longer than necessary. Then, slowly, deliberately, she picked it up. Her eyes flicked to mine briefly, but the smile on her face, once warm, didn't reach her eyes anymore. She opened the envelope, pulling out the neatly folded pages inside. Her eyes scanned the first line, then the next, and I watched as the color drained from her face. The page trembled in her hand. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice small, almost fragile. I leaned back further into the couch, crossing one leg over the other, letting my arm drape lazily across the back of the seat. "It's a transcript of your text messages," I said evenly. "With Greg." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. I don't know what you mean." "Don't insult my intelligence, Clara," I said, my voice now sharper than before. The patience I had been holding onto for months had finally worn thin. I know about the hotel, the weekend trips, the business dinners. I know everything." She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She closed it again, her hands trembling as they clutched the papers, the fight draining from her with each passing second. How did you?" "It doesn't matter how," I interrupted. "What matters is that it's over." "Over," she repeated, her voice cracking with disbelief. "What are you talking about?" I stood, my height towering over her, and looked down at Clara with something cold in my eyes. This wasn't the woman I had once loved, or at least, not the one I had thought I knew. "This marriage," I said, my words cutting through the tension like a knife. "This charade, all of it. You've been lying to me for months. Maybe longer. I've been patient. I've been kind. And this is how you repay me." Her lips quivered, and tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt no pity, not anymore. I had seen enough, heard enough. It was done. "James, please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Let's talk about this. I can explain." "Explain." I laughed bitterly, the sound foreign to my own ears. What could you possibly explain, Clara? That you felt neglected? That you needed attention? Fine. But you chose betrayal. And now you'll face the consequences. Her tears began to fall in earnest, but I turned away, walking toward the kitchen. The anger was still bubbling just under the surface, but I pushed it aside for the moment. Do you want a drink? I asked over my shoulder. You might need it. She didn't answer. She just stood there, staring down at the papers in her hands, her body trembling with silent sobs. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, savoring the burn as it slid down my throat. For a moment, the bitter taste seemed to match the feeling in my chest. When I returned to the living room, she was still there, rooted to the spot, unable to move. You don't have to do this, she said finally, her voice trembling with desperation. Oh, but I do, I replied, setting the whiskey down with a quiet thud. I reached for a second envelope sitting on the coffee table, one I had prepared earlier, and handed it to her without ceremony. You see, Clara, I've been busy while you've been occupied. She hesitated before taking it, her eyes scanning the envelope with a kind of dread. This, I continued, contains divorce papers. No, she whispered, shaking her head as if the very thought of it was too much to bear. No, you can't mean this. I've never meant anything more, I said firmly, my voice unwavering. You'll find everything is in order. The house will be sold, the proceeds split. Your car is yours, and I've already removed my name from the title. I've even arranged for your things to be packed and sent to your sister's place. James, please, she cried, reaching for my arm, her fingers grasping at nothing. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything. I pulled my arm away, my face hard. Anything. The time for anything was before you decided to tear us apart. I'm done. Clara. You can't manipulate me anymore. She sank onto the couch, her shoulders slumping, and buried her face in her hands. The tears fell freely now, but there was no empathy left in me to offer her. Only an emptiness. A release. A freedom. The moving truck will be outside tomorrow, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. The driver will wait for you to pack whatever you need tonight. The rest will be delivered tomorrow. And Clara, I added, pausing for a moment as I turned to face her one last time. She looked up at me, her mascara streaked across her cheeks. Don't contact me again, I said, my voice cold. This is goodbye. With that, I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, leaving her behind in the ruins of her own making. The air outside was crisp, the cool breeze carrying with it the faint scent of rain. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could finally breathe. The car ride was silent, the hum of the engine the only sound as I drove away from the apartment, from her, from everything that had been. I parked near the beach, stepping out onto the sand. The sun was setting, casting everything in hues of gold and crimson, painting the world in a way I hadn't seen in so long. It was beautiful, peaceful, the kind of peace I had been craving for so long. As the waves lapped at my feet, I let the memories of Clara wash away with them. There was pain, yes, but there was also something else, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in far too long. Hope. Hope for a future unburdened by lies and betrayal. The glow Clara had come home with was gone now, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was the one truly shining.